Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Thanks to TriBooth, the best vocal booth for home or on-the-road voice recording. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO Stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, learner!
Here we go.
Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. Thanks to Austrian Audio, making passion heard, and TriBooth. Don't forget, for $200 off, use the code PAP200. Now, Senor Crack or Senor Hack has managed to get into the Apollo, and not at the back room, everybody's darling, but managed to get fucking hell, what am I talking about?
You lost me.
Yeah.
After and welcome to another episode. But yeah.
He managed to give it a transition.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think Holly did on the train.
What did you do with the Apollo?
Yeah, what did you do with the Apollo, George?
What did you do with the Apollo, George?
Yeah. Are we going to have to talk to the police about what you did to the Apollo?
I heard backdoor in there somewhere. That can't be good.
Yes, I did the unspeakable.
Yeah.
Well, what I did was, so if anybody's familiar with the Apollo, there's this thing called the I/O matrix. And what the I/O matrix essentially lets you do is rewire it to work the way you want it to work, right? So out of the box, it works the way Universal Audio wants it to work. And unfortunately, Universal Audio's way of it working is not the way that not every other software wants to work. Like if you're trying to, and I will name one specific product very clearly because they're the ones that made me have to go through this, Zoom. If you're having to use Zoom on a Mac, it has a peculiar way of dealing with multi-channel interfaces, which is...
Is that only on a Mac, or does it do it just across the board?
It's not on Windows. This happens on Mac.
Only
Mac and Windows handle their audio drivers very differently, as you're probably aware. But in the Mac side, what Zoom has chosen to do, I think, and they've done it out of an act of idiot-proofing Zoom.
Yes,
is it hears every channel, right?
Every input.
At the same time. And that includes the monitor mix, the mix that only you should hear. Right. the producer, that's the mix for you and your speakers. That is sent back to Zoom, right? So it really creates a mess. And not only that, the other problem with Zoom is Zoom will also ignore any changes you make to the system audio in the audio MIDI setup area. So again, for Mac people out there, there's a hidden place to play with your audio drivers that you probably may not know about called audio MIDI setup. You go in there, and then you can go into speaker assignments for your Apollo, and you can choose where playback or anything coming from the Mac will appear. So you can do that for everything. It works great. You can make, YouTube show up on Virtual 3.4. Perfect.
Right.
Not Zoom. Zoom completely ignores that preference. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what special powers they have to to access the drivers at a lower level. I don't know how they do it, but they ignore.
But it only goes out 1 and 2, right?
It only goes out monitor left and right. And it's super irritating because the purpose of using Zoom most of the time is to be directed, in our context, is to be directed in a session and being recorded, and you're wearing headphones and you want to hear the Zoom caller, but it won't come out your damn headphones until you toggle the Q output setting from It's an annoying freaking kludge, right? It's really frustrating. So I decided, well, what if I just go into the I/O matrix and just shut everything down? Just shut it down. So I went through and I figured out, if I click in the right spot, I can just literally turn off each channel, and it just says offline. So I did that. I went through and I made every input and output just offline.
But George, it was a multi-channel input. It was a multi-channel device.
It was a multi-channel device. Not when I was done with it. So I basically turned the Apollo into a 2-channel, 2-mix device. So I made channel 1 aux 1 input, and I made channel 2 aux 2 input. And both of those are left, by the way, because the aux sends are stereo.
Let me try to break that down for everybody because I think that this is the
tough to
twisted
describe.
thing.
I have pictures of this on uadforums.com. And
Let me try here. Okay. So when you look at the IO matrix of the Apollo, on one side it just has input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many channels.
14 channels on this one. This is a twin that has 14.
Right. And so normally the way they set it up is microphone input 1 is channel 1 and microphone input 2 is channel 2.
Right.
And then eventually it breaks over into like the ADAT inputs for
speed,
channel
diff,
3, 4, et cetera.
et cetera. Right.
But when you look at the Apollo mixer, channel 1 of that mixer is always mic 1. Channel 2 is always mic 2.
Right.
The input on the mixer is not the same as the input that the device is saying is my input.
Right.
And beyond that, the mixer has other functions, and this is going to blow everybody's mind. It has effectively what's called an output, an aux out, aux send.
Right.
On some Apollo mixers, it has 2 aux sends. So you can take that microphone and send it someplace else.
But those are also virtual because those are happening internally.
So
those
what George does,
analog out. Yeah.
So what George does is he basically tells the Apollo that its input number 1, as far as the driver is concerned, is actually the aux output from the console mixer.
Right.
And that's how he gets a bunch of mics into one.
Like if you had a Mackie mixer sitting in front of you, this would be like taking a patch cable out of aux 1 output and plugging it into channel input 1 of your Mackie mixer.
Right.
So I'm rerouting what's coming out aux 1 and I'm sending it into input channel 1 of the mixer. Right? That's what's happening. Okay.
Wow.
So then I did that for channel 1 and I did that for channel 2 as well, so that we have 2 different channels with unique mixes, an aux 1 mix,
stereo,
and aux
like
2 mix.
2 mics or something, like U87
Right.
and 416
Now,
or something.
everything I'm describing right now is for using Zoom for typical voiceover purposes or maybe podcasting. So just a single mono audio signal into Zoom, period. Right. So now we've figured out how to get Zoom to listen to only what we want to send. So all I have to do is send whatever I want to send to it. I turn that aux send up. So I've got
because there's nothing else there.
Right, because there's just nothing else there. It's deaf. You can't hear any other channels because they're dead. I cut them off. Aux 2 is still feeding Zoom all the time. But when you're using Zoom in mono, it ignores channel 2, right? So it doesn't know it's there. So now we've got a dedicated mix for Zoom, finally. Now, it doesn't have to be just Zoom. You can use it for other stuff. You could send a mix to Source Connect. You could send a mix to really anything. But that's what I'm using it for in that case.
So what's different in your original twist the Apollo mixer back into itself thing is that you're now killing all the other inputs. So when you click on Apollo on some device, like even say Source Connect, you only see 1 or 2 inputs.
Well, that's a good question. I didn't even look yet. So if I go to Source Connect, which I am in now, and I mouse down, I'm not going to change it because I don't want to mess up the show. I still see in Source Connect
through 14
channels of input.
You do.
So it kills the input on the inside.
It kills the input to the driver, but the driver is still there.
But the driver's still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that keeps things from breaking. Like on the software side, it still sees everything normally. It doesn't know that I've done all these. It doesn't know I've ripped all the cables out, and taken it all apart.
Right. So the funniest thing is UA's reaction.
Well, okay, so that's only half the story. The other half, remember, Zoom is an idiot and won't play back through virtual channels. So the other half of the rewiring is I took channel 1 and channel 2 output and made them virtual 1 and 2. So now monitor left and right no longer exists in the way it did before. Now monitor left and right shows up on the virtual channel 1 and 2 fader. So I've really twisted the route.
Go over that one again.
So normally when you play back anything through channel
you're now
1,
on the right side of the matrix, of the IO
This
matrix.
is the output side.
on the output side.
Yeah.
I'm on the output side. So now I've said instead of the default being monitor left is channel 1, monitor right is channel 2. If I look at my outputs here, there is no monitor left and right. It's gone. I blew it away. That doesn't exist. Now, monitor channel 1 and 2 now are virtual 1 and 2. So anything that shows up on channel 1 and 2, which is what almost everything is going to show up there, that's the first two channels.
It goes to the monitor.
Is going to show up on the mixer, the monitor mixer, on the Apollo mixer, on virtual 1, 2.
Right.
So I've rewired it so that monitors show up on a fader instead of on the main outputs.
Yep.
So that fixed that problem now. So now I can get Zoom to show up on virtual 1 and 2. Why is that important?
Wait. So monitors show up on monitors, on inputs, not as outputs.
Right. And it doesn't break your monitor outputs. But your analog monitor.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yes,
your analog monitor still goes out monitor hardware.
That's right.
1 and 2.
The monitor left-right jacks on the rear, which go into your monitor speakers. In my case, that's what happens.
But now it only monitors what comes from console, which happens to be your output, your Mac, because that's 1 and 2, which is virtual.
Right. Actually, I'm gonna edit myself right now. I don't know if the monitor outputs on the Apollo are working. I didn't test those yet. They may not be working. Because you want to
hear yourself, right?
Well, they may not be working. I didn't test the monitor out left and right on the Apollo to see if they're physically functioning. I have no idea if they're working. I might have cut them off. I don't know. I haven't used them with speakers yet. So that's another thing to explore.
That might be a problem for some people.
That might be a problem for some people. Okay. But this is, again, a very unique use case. This is for all of us voice actor, podcaster kind of people. And now we've rewired that. So now when I hit, when I'm on a Zoom call, now Zoom shows up on a fader in the mixer where I want it to, instead of on the monitors. And now I can send that somewhere else. So what if I want to record it? I send it to aux 2. What if I want to hear it in my headphones? I send it to headphones. I can send Zoom where it needs to go, and now I have control over its outputs. I can send it anywhere I want.
But Zoom does work with virtual faders. I know that we've had Zoom work with like NEXUS and stuff. So what do you mean by Zoom doesn't output to virtual devices?
So in order to get anything coming from anything except like Pro Audio software sees your Pro Audio hardware as a multi-channel device, right? Pro Tools sees all the channels. Logic sees all the channels. Even Twisted
Zoom
Wave.
just wants to go out 1 and 2.
Even Twisted Wave sees all the channels, right?
Yep.
Source Connect sees all the channels. Now, Chrome sees channel 1 and 2 in and channel 1 and 2 out.
1 and 2 out. Yep.
Zoom, same. Only 1 and 2 in and 1, 2 out.
Sometimes Zoom sees every input.
Yeah, the difference is Zoom sees every channel, 1 through 14, all the time, right?
Input.
As inputs. And then it sees all, and then it feeds out to only the first 2 channels, which is monitor left and right. This is clear as mud, right? Explaining this over a podcast.
This is only Zoom if you're using an Apollo, right? Because
This is only valid to the hundreds of voice actors I've set up Apollos for.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Because I was going to say, I don't have that issue with Zoom, but then I've got NEXUS, so that makes my life easy.
Well, and Zoom works with virtual devices too. Like I haven't seen Zoom not work with virtual devices. That's what I was trying to drill down on.
If you go on a modern Mac running, I'm on Big Sur, but if I set speakers in audio MIDI setup as virtual 1 and 2, so that anything system audio will show up on a virtual channel. Zoom ignores that, and it still shows up on monitor channels.
Oh, so it only ignores the Apollo virtual. It doesn't ignore the another virtual driver like sound.
Oh no, it doesn't ignore drivers.
Yeah.
It just ignores that under that routing that we did.
The virtual driver of console of Apollo.
Right, that's what I mean. It's such a peculiar thing, but it's unique to Zoom, and I haven't seen anything.
We also have a little bit of trouble with that, though. There's some situations where Source Connect will get upset being set a virtual output
5 and 6 or 7 and 8.
Yeah, and if you use that, and it'll crash it, and then you got to reinstall it.
It's happened, but it doesn't seem to happen on the new Macs on the Silicon.
It's not as much, but every now and then someone floats through tech support with that, and it's like, man.
So there's some very strange things happening, at the lowest levels on the Apollo.
And Apollo drivers never worked with Chrome very well.
Well, on Windows, they don't work at all. Like if you're on Windows, Chrome cannot hear the Apollo. It's deaf. But can't hear it.
If I set the Apollo on my Mac Pro over here to Zoom, it'll crash Zoom.
Oh, really? That's weird.
Yeah, I cannot use Zoom with my Apollo.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Well, I mean, yeah. So this is a very unique hack for, again, this is a very niche thing. It's really for people on Apollo, on a Mac, and having to use Zoom, which unfortunately is really
Mostly everybody.
Almost everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is a loopback in Zoom, and Zoom doesn't officially have a loopback, so there's a loopback.
Well, Zoom does have a loopback where you can do what's called a screen share, and then say you can share computer sound.
Oh, sorry, not Zoom. I'm sorry. The Apollo doesn't officially have a loopback.
The Apollo does not have something dubbed a loopback.
But this is a loopback.
But you have to make it yourself. This is a cook-it-yourself loopback, right?
Exactly.
And that's what makes me crazy about the Apollo product and Universal is they are basically ignoring a massive user base and saying...
Because you're supposed to be recording like it's 1960.
Right.
Yeah,
they want
exactly.
They're thinking of everything as multi-track. I'm not saying that's wrong. And there's, of course, a massive audience and client base, and they're extremely successful selling this product. But there's still a massive user base that is using Apollo for non-multi-track production.
The credit to it, though, is that you can turn the Apollo into all kinds of knots.
Yes, you can.
And
they give you the power to hang yourself.
Yeah.
You just hope that whoever's helping you along will walk you through
I think a lot of people hang themselves with the Apollo. Personally, I think it is a great tool, extremely flexible. I mean, I feel like it took me 3 months until I really felt like I knew it, and then it took another year until I felt like I had like total command of it. I can't explain why it took so long until I was like, oh yeah, I get it. Like, not a problem at all. I understand it. Like, you can explain it without having it in front of you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is extremely easy to get like fucked up with it.
Yeah.
like lack of any other word for it. And you can get very frustrated.
The problem is you're taking a device that has the functionality, essentially, of a mixing console that has 2 aux sends, pre or pre-fader, two buses, a monitor output, EQ, channel strips, everything. If you had a physical analog board that did this function, it would be massive. It would be 3 feet deep, 2 feet deep. It'd be the size of 2 channels of a Neve or an SSL console, right? But they've shrunk it down into this virtualized thing. Just because it's software and it's tiny doesn't mean it's any less complicated. There's still a lot going on, routing wise, busing wise, and everything else.
But they got rid of one thing. If you think about it, think about a board, and you've got the fader, you got your input, your aux sends, you got your EQ. Maybe you have a dynamic section, and then you have the routing at the top of the channel.
That's right.
There is no routing,
right?
Because that's what you're messing with now.
Right.
You're basically
those
saying,
push
like,
buttons.
This microphone goes to track 1 or track 5.
Classic big frame console could have up to 24 bus buttons at the top of each channel strip, right?
Yeah, and you don't have that in the Apollo, and that's kind of what you just switched around. You're like, this channel is now going to show up on this input.
That's actually the best way to probably translate it to people that know analog. It's I rebust everything. Yeah. Now, if you use Pro Tools, and I know some of you do, this is totally familiar because in Pro Tools, you can go to I/O setup and you can get in there and go to the bus section and have your way with Pro Tools. I mean, you can do the same thing. You can completely decide what goes where. You can give it a name, and it's totally
Pro
flexible.
Tools is even better because you can just be like, I want another one. Give me another one.
Yeah, you can keep duplicating.
Whereas Apollo just gives you a set number.
It really bugs me that it gives you 2 sets of virtuals. That's it.
Yeah. And it only gives you 2 aux sends and 2 Q sends.
Well, you got to go up to the bigger ones to get the Qs. You get 2 aux sends, a headphone, and a line. 3, 4. You got to go up to the bigger brothers to get.
I've seen some that have 2 Q sends.
Yes, you got to go up to the rack-mounted ones. But if you want more virtuals, you got to go to I think it's the Twin X, which has more DSP, and then you can have, I think, up to 4 virtual pairs, I think is what it is. So, it's relying on internal DSP, and they let you throw money at it. You want more routing, you pay more for DSP. And you go up and up and up in price as you add more.
It's a familiar model.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very
So do you know the other interface company that has incredible power and we don't talk about them at all? Is Merging.
Oh, no. I've never talked about Merging.
But they have some fucking great stuff.
Really?
Excuse my French. They do.
Okay.
Yeah, they have some really powerful desktop.
Are they current? Are they still producing product?
Very current.
Okay. They're just kind of on our very high end.
They're actually very expensive.
Yeah.
They're very broadcast. And what's their one? It'd be worth checking out, actually.
Oh, checking it out right now. Oh, yeah.
Analog, Animod or something?
No, I think my buddies over at Studio Bricks, Guillermo, the owner, this is what he has. He told me about it.
It's much bigger in European circles, I'd say.
Yeah, oof.
It's true.
Yeah, it's
expensive.
It's 25. It looks like an Apollo twin, but it's $2,500 US.
Yeah, but I think it's even more like
it's way more
configurable.
Yeah, it's way more powerful. It's got full surround sound, like touch screen, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Okay, merging. All right. Well, that's for someone that. Well, I guess who's that for?
Very much broadcast.
It's made in Switzerland.
Because merging gets into AES 67, which is sort of like open source Dante in a way.
DSD 256.
They're extremely high quality.
384 kilohertz.
They make their own DAW, which is Pyramix.
Yeah. Oh, that's Pyramix. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Which is super PC.
So who's buying this?
I think finally
who's buying this?
Broadcasters,
really?
I think. I think broadcasters and really like high end, like some people that are kind of into like the Apogees and the Antelopes, they'll see this as
this is the next step,
or in that realm of like really good converters.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would say like people doing like live classical,
yes,
recordings, DSD stuff that's going to go to analog.
But I'll bet you anything their interface would. I mean, it's $2,500 is the problem.
Yeah.
But besides that, I think it'd probably do quite a bit.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it for that sole reason. As expensive as the Apollo seems when you compare it to the Scarlett, it's actually a pretty good value expensive. When you compare it to the next things up the food chain, like the RME and the merging and the metric halos and all that stuff. They're another whole level up.
Yeah.
Yep, they are.
Yeah, that merging looks really interesting. Probably. So, Billy sit in the same sort of area as the RME.
Doesn't have a lot of physical ins and outs. I mean,
I think they're a little bit above RME, to be honest. Like RME is
pricing wise it is, but
pricing wise they are for sure. And RME is not cheap.
No, it's not. So, but I tell you what, they're made in Switzerland, so hopefully the clocking is good.
You'd expect the best clocks ever.
It's like a Nagra. Yeah.
Well,
cuckoo pops out every time you hit the record button.
If all that I just said, you're going, damn it, I wish I could see what the heck he's talking about. Just go over to uadforum.com and there's a sub forum now that I'm the admin for called Voiceover Podcasting and Live Streaming. And I have
and breaking Apollos.
Yeah, and it's all about using Apollos for this stuff. And you'll see my threads about it over there. It's called Solving the Zoom Problem.
But if you need it sort of dumbed down a bit, just talk to Julian Krause.
I think what's so funny is like you solve the problem for them, and then Apollo's like, no, it's like I just fixed your problem. Like I know there's actors who have dropped the Apollo.
Oh, absolutely. I've convinced people to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I'm an Apollo virgin. I don't know anything about Apollos, but I had a look at the screenshots of that, and even I was sort of scratching my head, going, that just looks more difficult than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
The Apollo is very much like having a mixer on the side. Is pretty much what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like.
But
if you have an old school 24-channel mixer going into and getting returns from a 24 in, 24 out.
But if you're a voiceover dude, what do you want the Apollo for?
Because they want a virtual version of what you're doing.
Yeah,
I'll tell you the appeal. It's the same voiceover people that think that they need a Mackie 1604 or the Mackie 1402 and the Mackie 1202 crowd. There's a certain voiceover type that I don't know. They got their setup from either. I think radio people are also
me 15 years ago.
More in the video. But George, I'm talking about like the 1402.
Yeah, of course. I've set them
and you
up.
have like the ISDN and your CD player and your DAT player.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like I think they're looking for the digital version of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got some clients who are gripping, clinging on to that way of doing things. But I have others who have, let me kind of evolve their studios and move away from that. But it's just kind of a matter of people physically want to touch a fader to turn their mic up and down, physically touch this to turn this up and down.
Or see it
See it on
I
the
see it
board.
being like
Yeah.
on the board.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, though, George, because you would see so many home setups. What is the most popular preamp interface?
The Apollo, the Scarlett,
It's probably the Scarlett. Just
Yeah,
because of
I would
the
think.
sheer numbers of people that are like, well, I have a Scarlett 2i2 and a Rode NT1A. If I could, if I had $1 for every time I heard that.
The Scarlett. I mean, it kind of won the. It's funny because the AI1 is too expensive compared to the Scarlett. So when you're looking at stuff, why would I get an AI1 compared to a Scarlett? The Scarlett's maybe physically bigger, but it seems to have more facilities than the AI1.
The Scarlett's gone through 2 revisions too. It's on a Gen 3, revision.
It has a solid driver. It's simple, but it sounds good. It just sort of it hit enough of the boxes that it just did
And it's
super
red.
well.
It's cute.
Yeah. Hey, red.
Right? Well,
What can you say?
Apogee doesn't want to be left behind. Did you see their new one?
No.
Is it red?
It's called Boom. And guess what color it is? It's not red.
Red.
It's not
It's
purple.
not blue. Yes, it's purple.
Oh, that's Apogee.
Yeah. The whole chassis is purple ano. It's a purple anodized, and I love purple anodized. I have several mountain bikes with purple anodized parts on them. But yeah, I saw that thing and I was like, $300? Okay, let me see. $300, one mic preamp. It takes the place of the Apogee 1, which was just a one mic input.
Yeah.
It's sort of the new version of that, with a new form factor. No more stupid breakout cable and it's
And how solid does that feel compared to like? It seems to me the Persona stuff doesn't feel as solid. It's like more plasticky. Persona seems more on the Behringer side of things. Than the,
I was not recommending anything Personas for a long time until I got the Revelator, and its physical build quality is quite good because all the buttons are membrane. They're soft buttons, and then the knob feels reasonably good. The only knob on the front.
Are they wiggly? Is it like you feel like you're like wiggling the whole PCB board with the knob?
Yeah, if you do what those guys on YouTube do and push it back and forth hard, it has a little bit of movement. Yeah, but you don't notice it when you're using it day to day. And yeah, for what it is, it's
do you feel like the preamp is like just as? I mean, they are all the same chip, right? You think about it, a Scarlett. And like our Claret preamp.
I swear I watched Julian Krause do a review of one of these, and it didn't have great review.
The Cirrus would be the converter chip in it.
Right, which is a good converter chip.
But also the preamps are usually just like some, typical, the same TL, what is it, like?
Yeah.
998, or I forget the numbers, but just it's the same chip.
Right. Watch. That's what's great about Julian Krause's stuff. Yeah, it's dry and it's very analytical, but you get to start seeing like, oh, it's that chip again. Oh, it's that chip again.
Yeah.
A lot of them are exactly the same. It's the same preamp chip. It's the same AKM converter or maybe a Sirius converter, and their software is different. Like the features in the front panel are different, but it's theirs to mess up. I forget who I was talking to. Someone was looking at a piece of gear and he knew circuits, and he's like, their preamp is the example preamp from like that's chips. When you buy the chip and they give you like example circuits, like here's a preamp, like just stick a capacitor between these two legs, or like do these two things in a variable potentiometer on these two legs, and you got a preamp. And like that was the preamp in some interface. Like they just took the example one and went like, okay,
that'll work.
Make it variable gain.
Yeah, well, it's hard to find something that can do. Even if you don't like the way it does it, it's hard to find something that does everything that the Apollo does, and at that price point.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a market leader. It's going to be for a while. There's more expensive, less capable, but also more expensive, more high fidelity devices. There's things with arguably better drivers. There's things that are simpler and cheaper and easier. It's just this weird middle ground thing that mostly is not that is pretty awesome at many things. And
can you do to Total Mix what is Total Mix as flexible as the Apollo? In the end?
I don't know, because I don't own one. I've only had to set it up for people and kind of muddle my way through it. But I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it's got a lot of similarities.
Yeah, Total Mix you can get in. You can certainly do some hack jobs on Total Mix, because we did one here.
Yeah.
Because it had an issue with once we put the splitter in, I've got the analog channel, so I've got the 4 preamps coming in, and if you hit mute, the way it actually works is bizarre because it doesn't actually mute going in. I don't know where it mutes, but it doesn't mute going in. So if you've got preamps turned on, you have open up 1, you have 3 on mute, all 4 are live.
Right.
Which was
that's the way the Apollo is too. You can mute them on the console, but they're still live to the software.
That's because the preamp goes almost directly
Straight
into
to the input.
AD converter.
Yeah.
Through the inserts, and that's about it. So that's what gets in people's way. Here's another hack I came up with this morning talking to Jeff Cohen for entirely too long about the Revelator, because he bought one on my recommendation. He was like, what's really annoying? It has a mute button on the front of the unit, but it doesn't mute the mic. I'm like, no, it mutes the speakers. He's like, well, why doesn't it mute the mic? That's what I want to be able to mute, is the mic.
Yes.
And so we literally came up with a hack. We came up with a way to do it because it has preset buttons on the front.
Yeah.
So I came up with a preset that loads the expander, the gate, with the threshold at at 0.
Yeah.
And the range at minus whatever infinity
Just cuts
was.
it off. Yeah.
So when you press preset like this, it
Off. Yeah.
Kills it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very clever.
I turn it back on again. All it's doing is recalling a preset for the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't click, it doesn't pop, it doesn't do anything. And it's a total hack. Like,
Well, if it clicked, you could change the attack time and it would sort that out anyway, right?
right. I mean, can you hear this thing? I turn it on and off.
No.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
No.
That's
Because it
perfect.
probably has just a little bit of a ramp in, so it does
that's really
nicely
good.
cut it down. It doesn't cut it short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just pressing the preset button, and you can set it so that you're toggling between preset 1 and 2. So preset 1 is what you're hearing. And I just toggle back and forth.
Yeah.
Can you make it momentary?
That's not Source Connect dropping out, by the way.
No, you can't make it.
That's right.
That'd be sweet if you could make it momentary. It'd be like a talkback switch hack.
Yeah. It's not momentary. It's on, or it's you're toggling between 2 states.
Yeah, I
2
understand.
presets.
Yeah.
But I pat myself on the back. I thought that was a cool hack. I was
Yeah,
like,
it's a great hack.
a single push button on and off. There you go.
Yep.
It
Lovely.
only took me 3 hours.
The difference is you give that to Personas and they'll go, thank you. You enhanced
Yeah,
our
exactly.
product."
Can I just say, my tip from listening to all that, being the Apollo Virgin, is just fucking take the opportunity, go get the 20% off Nexus that's happening at Source Elements now, and just fucking,
Yeah, exactly.
because it is a really useful piece of software.
I think one of the biggest issues with Nexus is people don't know what it is.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that's, if they knew what it was and they're working in a commercial studio, man, they'd be snapping it up.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to Tribooth and Austrian Audio, recorded using Source Connect, edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging, with tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiosuite.com.